The night stretched wide and endless across the quiet valley, and the air shimmered faintly with the whisper of dreams waiting to be born beneath the thread of a silver moon that hung like a promise over the still earth. There was a girl who walked alone, her hair flowing like a shadow, her eyes deep with the knowing of things she could not name. She carried in her hands a small thread shining faintly, a thread that pulsed with a light not of the sun, not of the fire, but of something older and softer and filled with sorrow. She did not remember when she found it, or perhaps it found her when the world was still painted in the hues of twilight and every leaf trembled with the secret of the unseen. She walked past the sleeping houses where windows blinked with the faint glow of forgotten dreams, and the dogs stirred but did not bark, for they too felt the peace that the silver moon poured gently upon them. The path led her to the old river where the water moved in silence, as if afraid to wake the stars reflected upon its skin. She knelt by the edge and let the thread dangle in the water. The ripples shimmered and sang a faint tune like a lullaby for the lost, and she closed her eyes listening to the melody that rose and fell like breath. The thread began to glow brighter, and she felt something stir within her chest, a memory perhaps, or a longing, the kind that has no name, only a weight she could not let go of. She looked up and the silver moon seemed closer, its light spilling upon her face like a gentle hand that wished to remember her name long after she had forgotten it. She whispered to the water, though her lips made no sound. She spoke in the silence that only the moon could hear, and the river answered in waves of trembling light. She thought of her mother who had vanished on a night like this, leaving behind only a silver thread woven into her cradle. She thought of the stories her grandmother told of the moon that weaves destinies and the girls who follow its path into the unknown. She felt the cool earth beneath her fingers and knew the path was not meant to end here, not tonight. The thread hummed softly, calling her forward, and so she rose, her bare feet brushing against the soft moss as she walked along the riverbank, the moon above her watching silent and kind. She passed the grove of willow trees where shadows leaned like old friends whispering secrets in the wind. She felt their breath on her neck, and yet she was not afraid, for the thread pulsed gently, guiding her like a heart that knows its way through darkness. She reached a clearing where the air smelled of rain and memory, and the moonlight spilled in a pool so clear that the stars seemed to rest upon it. She saw in that light the faint outline of a door, not of wood, not of stone, but of silver threads woven together into a shape that trembled as if alive. She stepped closer, her hand trembling not with fear but with a strange reverence, as if she was about to touch the edge of a dream that had been waiting for her all her life. The thread in her hand shimmered brighter, connecting itself to the door. The light ran through it like water through veins, and the door began to open without a sound. She stepped through, and the world behind her vanished, leaving only the scent of night and the hum of the moon above. She found herself in a place that was both sky and sea, both silence and song, a place where every breath carried the echo of something ancient. She looked around and saw threads stretching in every direction, silver, gold and crimson threads weaving and unweaving themselves into patterns that shimmered and dissolved like mist. Each thread seemed to hum a name, a memory, a story that had once been real. She realized she was standing within the loom of the moon itself, where all fates are spun and undone. She held her thread close and felt it tug gently, pulling her toward one glowing strand that shimmered brighter than the rest. She followed it through the endless weaving, her heart trembling with a strange familiarity. She touched the glowing thread, and suddenly the world around her shifted. The silver turned to warmth, the hum became a heartbeat, and she stood in a memory that was not her own. She saw a woman with hair like midnight weaving at a loom of light, her hands moving gracefully, her eyes wet with unspoken words, and the woman turned and smiled at her. That smile filled her with warmth and sorrow, for it was her mother, though younger and shining with moonlight. The woman spoke without sound, but the girl understood. She had been waiting for her to return and finish what was begun beneath the thread of the silver moon. The girl felt her heart tremble as the air around her shimmered, the silver threads pulsing like veins of light, and her mother's eyes held the glow of 1,000 forgotten dawns. She tried to speak, to reach across the distance that separated them, yet no sound would come, only the hum of the threads that seemed to echo her unspoken longing. Her mother reached out, her fingers brushing the air between them, and the touch was like water rippling through time. The thread in the girl's hand glowed fiercely for a moment, then softened, weaving itself into her mother's loom, and she understood that the thread was not hers alone. It was part of something vast, something that bound every soul, every tear, every hope. Beneath the light of the moon, the woman looked at her daughter with sorrow and love, and the loom began to move faster, the threads weaving scenes of life and loss, of laughter and grief, of stars being born and fading into dust, and through through it all the silver moon shone still and quiet above, as though keeping watch over the dance of all things. The girl closed her eyes and felt the memories of countless lives passing through her like rivers. She saw herself in many forms: a child running through fields of fireflies, a woman standing at the edge of a storm, a shadow whispering across centuries, all bound by the same shimmering thread. When she opened her eyes, the loom had slowed and her mother's face began to fade into the silver light, leaving behind only a whisper that brushed her heart like wind. Be brave, child, follow the light and remember that no thread is ever truly broken. The girl reached forward, but her hand met only light, and when she looked down, the ground beneath her feet had become a bridge woven of threads glowing faintly beneath her. Every step she walked upon it slowly, each movement echoing through the vastness around her, and the air seemed to hum in rhythm with her heartbeat, as though the moon itself was breathing with her. Below her the world shimmered. She saw the valley, the river, the sleeping houses far beneath her, and she felt both small and infinite, as though she was walking through the veins of creation. The bridge led her to a place where the threads converged into a single column of light rising endlessly upward. She could hear faint voices within it, the laughter of children, the sighs of lovers, the prayers of those who wept alone, every sound blending into a single tone of peace. She stepped closer and felt the pull of the light. It was gentle but certain, like the tide calling her home. She thought of the world she had left behind, of the trees whispering in the night, of the water reflecting the stars, of the people who slept unaware beneath the watchful moon. She thought of the stories that would be told and the ones that would never find words. She reached out and touched the column. The moment her fingers met its surface, the light spilled outward, swallowing her in brilliance, and she felt herself unravel, not in pain but in release. She became weightless, a strand of silver drifting through eternity, and yet she was still herself, the same small heart that had followed the moon through the valley, the same child who held the glowing thread. She felt herself woven into the great tapestry of light, each memory, each breath becoming part of something greater than she could ever name. The light dimmed slowly, and she found herself once more standing upon the soft grass of the valley, the moon still above her, its silver face calm and kind. In her hand she held the thread once more, but now it no longer glowed. It was soft, dull, like the color of mist before dawn. She looked around and saw the world was the same, yet somehow changed. The river shimmered faintly, the trees seemed to breathe, and in the silence she could hear the hum of the threads deep within the earth. She understood then that the loom was not only in the sky, it lived within every living thing, every breath, every heartbeat. She walked to the river and knelt once more, letting the thread touch the water. The surface rippled, and in its reflection she saw not just her face but the faces of many, each one smiling, each one connected by the faint shimmer of silver. She smiled softly and whispered thank you, though she did not know to whom. Perhaps to the moon, perhaps to the thread, perhaps to the silence itself. The air grew still around her, and she felt a peace she had never known before. Here is part 3 of your story, Thread of a Silver Moon, written in the same soft, endless flow without punctuation or headings. The night deepened and the silver moon climbed higher, spreading its quiet grace upon the sleeping earth. The girl sat beside the river, her hands folded around the now silent thread. The air shimmered faintly as if it too breathed the memory of what had been. She felt the weight of stillness, not heavy but sacred, like the pause between two heartbeats where life lingers before becoming something new. She watched the moon reflected upon the surface of the water and wondered if her mother watched too from beyond the weave of light. She closed her eyes and listened, and in the soft hum of the world she thought she could hear the loom still turning somewhere far away, weaving new beginnings from the ends of old dreams. She rose slowly, her feet brushing against the damp earth, and the scent of the night flowers rose around her, gentle and sweet. She began to walk toward the hill where the first light of dawn would soon appear. Though the sky was still dark, she could feel the whisper of morning hidden behind it. She held the thread between her fingers and felt its pulse, faint but steady, as if it still remembered the rhythm of the moon. She thought of all the people who wandered the earth, lost and searching for something they could not name. She thought of how each one held their own thread, invisible but real, connecting them to others, to the past, to what is yet to come. She knew now that the silver thread was not meant to shine forever, it was meant to guide, to remind, to teach the art of seeing the unseen. She reached the hilltop and looked out over the valley. The world spread below her, vast and hushed, and the moonlight spilled like a silver river over fields and roofs and rivers, winding like veins through the heart of the land. She felt love rise within her, not just for the beauty beauty before her but for everything that had ever been broken and mended, for every story that had ended only to begin again. She raised her hand and let the thread slip from her fingers. It drifted upward, caught by a breeze that carried it toward the sky. It shimmered faintly one last time before vanishing into the light of the moon, and in that moment she felt her mother's presence, a soft warmth around her shoulders, a whisper that said, "You have finished what I began." She smiled though her eyes were wet and whispered back, "I will remember." The air stirred and the stars seemed to blink brighter as though answering her. The moon began to pale, the silver giving way to the faint blush of dawn. The world breathed again, the river stirred, the birds began to sing. She turned toward the east and watched as the first golden line of sunlight touched the horizon, breaking the long embrace of night. She felt the warmth on her skin and knew that she was still part of the thread that, though unseen, would never truly fade. She walked down the hill, her steps light, her heart steady, and in the wind she heard faint laughter like the echo of a lullaby once sung beneath the silver moon. She followed the path that led through the willow grove where shadows still lingered softly, but no longer with sorrow, only with memory. She touched one of the trees and felt the life within it pulsing quietly as though greeting her old friend. The world felt new and ancient all at once, every leaf, every stone whispering the same truth, that endings are merely beginnings. Wrapped in silence she walked until she reached the old bridge that crossed the river. She paused there, the sun now rising behind her, and in the water she saw the faint shimmer of silver drifting below the surface, as if the moon had left a parting gift. She smiled and stepped across the bridge, feeling the earth solid and kind beneath her feet. She did not look back, for she carried the moon within her now, every heartbeat a quiet glow, every breath a reminder of the thread that binds all things. As she disappeared into the light of morning, the wind carried her whisper across the valley, soft and eternal like the song of the river beneath the thread of a silver moon.